this is Liz from People I Think Are Cool, a bi-weekly podcast where I interview my favorite creatives from across the globe. If you're looking for a dose of creative inspiration, then go to peopleithinkarecool.com or subscribe to People I Think Are Cool on iTunes and Stitcher.
You like film, from cult to classic, from blockbuster to B-movies. And there just isn't that one place with all the fan fervor and passion that's covering the kind of mad, diverse brilliance that you love.
Well, that's where you're wrong.
AfterMovieDiner.com is that fan-built movie nirvana just for you, featuring the sweet, sweet writings of the wife dork herself. AfterMovieDiner.com. Go there. Be the best you can be.
The official podcast of the Alamo Drafthouse, Winchester.
Welcome to another episode of the In the Mouth of Dorkness podcast. We are back in the Green Turtle in Winchester, Virginia, to continue our conversation regarding Lost Weekend 11, which we just finished at the Alamo Drafthouse in Winchester, Virginia, right next door to the Green Turtle. How convenient that is. And joining me today is a roundtable of Lost Weekend experts, headed by Andy Gyurisin, playing the role of Billy this episode. Andy Gyurisin, how's it going?
Dork.
It's like Billy is right here. And yes.
Where's my cider? I can't have buns. How's that all right?
Yeah,
Does that work?
That's perfect. That's perfect. Children are tough.
Yeah.
All right. We talked last episode about our favorites from Thursday night and Friday. We didn't cover everything. We may even have to do a lightning round at the end of this episode to recall a few of those movies that we didn't highlight that we wanted to. But let's just jump right into Saturday for now. We kicked off early this year, 8 a.m., Andy. Why do you hate us so much?
We did 8 a.m. on
all 3 days.
Oh, yeah, Saturday and on Sunday. 3 days.
And we don't get out like till 2 o'clock in the morning if you do the midnight movie.
1:30.
1:30.
1:30, yeah.
Yeah, but then I have to walk. It's like 2 a.m. before I hit the bed. And that's rough, Andy.
Okay, no?
But we all enjoy it.
Sure.
So anyway, Saturday, we started with an animation block. We got to have our Saturday morning cartoons. Then we had a lot of choices. We saw Fury, or The Wedding Guest, or Dualis. Is that
Also known as Mother's Instinct.
Mother's Instinct. And then we had the documentary Wrestle, Fugue, Giant Little Ones, a double screening of Fiddlin', complete with Q&A and celebrity guests.
Yep.
We had our screening of A Breath Away and Styx. We had our other celebrity guest screening with The Public. And then we had, secret screening. Shh.
Yeah.
Talk about what that was.
Yep.
Then we closed out midnight with either Family or The Dead Center, which we chatted a little bit about on our last episode.
This is a big day.
Big day.
It's a big day.
Hard to figure out where we want to begin. I guess with the animated shorts.
Sure.
I missed the first one. I came in as some fish were singing.
Yep.
I enjoyed it, I saw.
Let's preface this by saying if there's confusion at the table for those who attended, both screens had the same Magnificent Cake film, which was the 44-minute short film that played, but each one started with a different short film.
Oh, really?
And so there were two different films that played. One was one about a fish. The other one was about a man exploring with a Yeti. And so I wanted to create a sense of walking out and saying, "What'd you think about that one with the fish?" And be like, "I didn't have that one with the fish. I had this one here."
Well, I didn't have the one with the Yeti.
Yeah. There was yeah. So that was it. They were brought to us by G Kids. I really like the felt look of the film. I thought the artwork is beautiful. The whole point of doing these animated shorts is to highlight the artists and the artwork that goes into it, and I thought that was beautiful. I also thought, how impressive is it to tell a topic as difficult as this through a medium focused oftentimes set for just children or children's tales and that sort of thing as well. So I thought the two combined and didn't ever really fight with each other, but merely told this beautiful sort of story, and very depressing as well if we do that at 8 a.m.
Yeah. It was a lot going on in that film. But and I agree. It's all about showcasing what animation has to offer beyond the Disney aesthetic, and as a result, it took me to places I was not expecting. I enjoyed the journey, but it was also, I mean, it was emotionally hard to watch some of that stuff.
Who saw the shorts in the morning? So good. Which short did your guys begin with? The Fish. Okay. So I think theater. You guys had 5.
5, yeah.
So theater 7 had the other one. It's okay.
Thoughts on the Magnificent Cake or the Fish?
A little depressing.
Yeah.
I don't consider that a children's cartoon.
Yeah. I'm not going to set my nieces and nephews down
Yeah.
to that anytime soon, Andy. But I don't know. Maybe.
I think
maybe.
with a good conversation, you can set anyone down to it. You know, I always get the question always comes from me is film club appropriate for children? And I always say it is appropriate for any age as long as you have the conversation that follows or the education before it. I mean, the internet's around and that sort of thing as well. So
That's certainly how my family treated me when I was a kid. As long as we talked about it, they would pretty much show me anything.
Oh no, what are you talking about?
We'll talk about the animated shorts.
Okay.
Do you have any thoughts, Billy? I thought Andy was playing your part, but apparently you're still around. So
dork.
What are you Dork.
Andy did a great job.
See?
I feel as though it's covered.
Do you have any? Did you want to contribute anything to the animated short conversation?
Nope.
Okay. Next up for me was the Vietnamese action film Fury. I'm not going to pass up Vietnamese action film.
Because we rarely get films from Vietnam to begin with.
I can't think of the last one I saw, that's for sure. This one stars, oh gosh, I really don't want to mess up her name. I'm going to need to look it up real quick.
Who all saw Furies? Show two other people?
Right.
Yes, exactly.
Action Mom returns with Fury, starring Veronica. I'm going to butcher this because I'm a dumb American.
You would say no.
No?
No,
Veronica,
I'd say.
No?
Mhm.
Okay. Starring Veronica No as Hai, a debt collector for some Vietnamese gangsters who has her child kidnapped from her, and they are going to sell her into a slave trade. And she has to use her special set of skills to prevent that from happening, and she most certainly does. Yeah.
Tell me about the audience reaction to this film, because I was not in this screening. So how was the reaction, like verbally, while the film was happening?
Oh, you definitely had some audible, fist pumping, cheering
Yeah, okay.
moments when Action Mom would take out the appropriate bad person.
Okay.
It was shot. What's interesting is, having watched Master Z the night before, the Chinese Hong Kong martial arts film,
We didn't even talk about
pseudo-sequel.
Department Q at all, did we?
didn't. No. The pseudo sequel to the Ip Man Legacy. That you watch the style of action in that, and it's lots of medium shots. You get to see the full performance of the action sequence. And Fury, the Vietnamese action film, is shot much more in an American style with lots of close-ups, lots of cutting, lots of edits. And, I think there's a real energy to that.
Yeah.
But I think I tend to prefer the more balletic action of Chinese cinema to what we get in America, and I
Right.
guess with Fury as well. But, when she takes somebody out with a meat cleaver, and it feels good. You want to cheer, and I think people did. I don't know. What do we think of this Action Mom?
A+.
A+. Lots of people afterwards were really into it.
Yeah.
It was non-stop. There was no downtime in this movie. It is like they take the kid and she is on the chase for the entire movie.
It's very basic, but in the best possible way.
Yes. Yeah.
Agreed?
Oh yeah, our little girl should watch this movie.
Yeah, so there's not
I like that.
a deep plot to figure out or anything. But I don't say that in a negative way at all. I just mean like...
No, it's straightforward. She's got a singular objective, and
movie.
yeah, which I think is fine, and it's thrilling along the way. I mean, she doles out some beatings, she takes some beatings, and I think the fight choreography is entertaining and engaging. But like Brad said, it's more frenetic.
Yes. It just occurred to me that I really appreciated that, like, she's not invincible. She is very competent at what she's doing, but she takes those beatings and she's kind of messed up by the end.
There's a shot where she's running down a crowded street, and she hooks through like a corner, and one of the henchmen is in waiting for her, and he just, like, this is Sparta, kicks her right in the side as she runs by, and she just explodes off to the side. And I thought, what a great like action sequence that shows, you know, she does have a particular set of skills, but she's fighting every bit of the way to get what she needs done.
Whether or not we fully agree with trivia coming off the IMDb page, but they claim a first Vietnamese film to be released in the United States.
Is that true?
That's why I'm reading this via the IMDb page. Whether or
I
not
find that highly unlikely, but again, I cannot think of another Vietnamese movie that I've seen.
right.
Yeah, so maybe that might be true.
Brought to us by Wellgo. Maybe someone from Wellgo is listening and can provide us
or deny.
some confirm or deny this right here.
Did anybody see The Wedding Guest, where that played opposite Fury?
No, I think some people were going to go see it this week, in fact. Maybe even today. But
Mother's Instinct.
I think I'll try to go this week, though.
I was a fan of it. I didn't see it during this block. I caught it the next day, but I was a big fan of Michael Winterbottom's.
Dev Patel playing a role that he has not played before, really.
Yeah, I mean, he's very much the film noir guy in the film who, you know, he also has a very special set of skills. He's hired to retrieve a woman from her family because she's being forced to marry another person that she doesn't want to. So they stage this kidnapping to subvert the family's expectations. And where it goes from there, yeah, I mean, like, I feel like noir is the best comparison. It's something that Humphrey Bogart would have done in a different setting, you know.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed it a lot. I found it incredibly engaging, incredibly thrilling, and ultimately surprising because despite so many similarities to film noir, it does not go where film noir goes.
One of the things that I love about Michael Winterbottom is that he places you in the location. It's not a recreated set. It's not this is a small town in America, but we've retransformed it into this. It is, you are there, and you could tell the actors are there, and you could tell, like, he's just filming it as you're walking through those places.
You could watch this and enjoy this film simply as a travelogue of India and Pakistan. Places I've never gone to. I'm very curious about and would love to one day convince my wife to journey with me to there. But yeah, as is, it's, you know, you see the whole country, you see both countries, but you see a lot of India and the various places of India. Yeah. And it's not all one landscape that you think it is. Yeah. And then, you know, you throw in some murders and some guns, and it's pretty exciting.
Absolutely.
So yeah, The Wedding Guest, I definitely recommend it. Dualis, anybody go see Dualis? Yes.
I saw that.
Barbara.
I really enjoyed that. Billed as a psychological thriller, does not disappoint. I was thinking of, I was trying to think of the name of that road in San Francisco, Lombard Street.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, it kind of reminded me of a film version of that because, and I think it really pulled it off. A lot of times, sometimes you get hints of things along the way, and maybe that's fun too, to be able to say I saw that coming. But I thought it was good. It worked well as a twisty. It kind of reminded me. It started out reminding me of a past Lost Weekend entry, Under the Tree. A little bit, which I really love that one too. So, I thought that was a good. I was glad that I chose. You know, you always hate missing the ones that are playing at the same time. You feel the fear of missing out. FOMO is alive and well inside me, but I was glad about that. I enjoyed it. I would recommend it. Although it was kind of funny because I kept looking for the descriptions once I was trying to like reconfirm my choices, and I kept looking under Duelis, and I'm like, where's the damn description and stuff? I had to go to the English title, so it's under Mother's Instinct. So, but.
What I love about this conversation is that we're learning so much about Barbara's film style while we talk about this. I hear you have, for those of you listening, this very sort of small and petite woman who's like, Under the Tree, Dog Man, get me some of these really rough and great international cinemas. And I don't think anyone would have ever realized that, just sort of talking and that sort of thing. But what I also love, Mother's Instinct, Duales, there was this big debate when we were creating the schedule as to which title it should go under. I'm a firm, let's stick with the international title. Sometimes it does not always happen that way, but it was our homage, our tip of the hat to our first Lost Weekend opening selection. Valerie Batenz was the lead in that film, who was also the main lead from Broken Circle Breakdown. She was also in the Ardennes, that was part of Lost Weekend as well. But I classified it as a Hitchcockian thriller. Felt very much like a Hitchcock, as told by Todd Hayes. Far From Heaven had that sort of same aesthetic. You didn't know if it was the 1950s or if it was modern day or where it was sort of a sitting set and that sort of thing as well. So it was really, really great. That's a title that I don't know we will ever hear or see from again. There's several of those
classifications like that on the schedule. Right. Hey, the wedding guest, it's going to be playing all week, so don't even bother. Andy, come on. But Dualis, you're never going to see ever again.
Until I say that, and then no one goes in for that, and the servers are yelling at me because they're like, "I'm not making any money today, Andy."
Yeah, but that's what I want, Andy.
There are several. I think there are several movies in our selections that I fear we may not see again.
Well, then I need you to personally email the...
I will. I can do that.
So the middle block was a block that I had to miss for podcast reasons. That was Wrestle, Fugue, and Giant Little Ones. I didn't see any of these, and I heard good things about all three, actually. Which one should we jump to first?
Who saw one of those? Wrestle. Let's talk about Wrestle.
Let's talk Wrestle.
So for me, Wrestle is one of those movies that really any of us could be in, because it's just kind of, all of us have struggles in life, and these young men from a African-American community down in the South, and a coach who comes in, a white coach who's all about their future and their potential and where they could go. And, they all went to some level of success. Some won, some lost, some got out of town, some stayed in town, And I like the fact that it is just very representative of what life is all about, these big struggles. And it's not about the struggles, it's kind of what we do with them. And it didn't end the way I wanted it to, because we all want everyone to win,
sure.
And everybody to be the state champions, and obviously that didn't happen. I just felt it was a good balance of life in there.
I think what I found very fascinating about the coach's experience is, I think what Wrestle sort of highlights is that you can be 100% invested down to your heart and want to help people and want to be engaged. And if you don't totally understand what you're engaging with, it can really impact your ability to connect with what's going on. And I think that's a good lesson, because a lot of times I personally fall back on, well, my heart is in the right place, and I'm just trying to help. Like when he shows up with a Patagonia jacket, like that, to me, that whole interaction in a nutshell is down to like, I just want to give you the jacket off of my back. I want to be so helpful. And I think the kid's reaction to it is very honest and very genuine and reasonable. And I think that just highlights an important part about how we connect to other people.
And the scene that stands for me is that scene where, and I'm going back to when I watched it as a screener link, not recently, so if I mess this up a little bit, you'll at least catch me on it. But with the car ride and calling his grandfather and putting the grandfather on the phone, there was a moment where Jen and I were just like, this is an amazing teacher, mentor, individual,
1,000%.
And he was able to just change the dynamic of where that story or that emotion was going at that time. And I think it was almost at that scene, because it's relatively early on that Jen and I were like, this is it. For anything, we want people to realize who this man is and how he's impacting these students in this community and that sort of thing as well.
Well, so do we count spoilers for docs?
I'm tired of having the spoiler conversation,
Yeah,
Billy. Listeners, it's on you to pause and jump ahead. Billy's going to spoil this entire thing.
No,
I'm not going to listen, because I haven't seen it.
I think if Billy says something that encourages someone else to see this film, it's not a spoiler in any way, shape, or form.
I think it's because like you were pointing out that he really is invested, and he is a good mentor to them, absolutely. And you see that on display as he solves problems, trying to figure out how to keep these guys engaged in what they're doing in a productive way. But at the end of the movie, he didn't do that job anymore.
Yeah.
he quits.
Yeah.
Is that a victory? Is that a loss?
Burnout factor, maybe.
I mean,
Well, he's 28 years old.
Yeah.
Right, I mean, and
So he
look-
doesn't even understand his situation, I think, fully. Like the Patagonia jacket story. Like, you've been to that house twice, but you do not see the viewpoint of their life at all.
Yeah.
But yet, in the car scene where he calls Grandpa, and the lack of father figures for every one of those boys,
Yeah.
either being raised by grandparents or just when his smile comes on to his face because he's talking to his grandpa,
Yep.
and that is the father figure in his life. I mean, this documentary is about wrestling, and I thought, I want to learn a little bit about wrestling. I'm balling in this documentary now.
Well, and I think the other thing is, I mean, he was very honest about his struggles,
Yes.
right?
Yeah,
About
agreed.
addiction,
Oh, yeah, he had his
right?
own
So
struggles.
here's a guy who's actually different color skin, but actually the same struggles in life
Yeah.
as they have.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he chose his path. He chose what he did with those struggles. Okay, he left the school. I don't know that that's a failure, right? I mean, we
Right.
all
Well, the
kind
school
of
shut down.
categorize.
Sorry.
And then
Well,
he went to law
sure,
school.
yeah.
You know what I mean? So he's going to do
Leaving your
something
house
with
for
it.
Yeah, and I mean, in all fairness to the film, we get one sentence of where he's gone off to. We don't know the preface or post behind it and that sort of thing as well that could have led up to it. So I take those sort of last sentences as hopeful messages and not necessarily just negative, but we'll sort of move from that point
They
there.
don't get into it very much. There's a few references in the film, but you know, one of the biggest problems facing teachers right now is that you are shackled by administrations.
Right.
And he wanted to help kids, and a lot of the things that they showed him doing are strictly against protocol.
Sure,
You are not
yeah,
allowed to put
yeah.
kids in your car. You are not allowed to go to their homes. You cannot have contact with their family members. Like,
Yeah.
you know,
You can't curse.
you cannot curse, and which is I can.
You can't come out front of the school.
Yeah. I mean, you know, you're absolutely not allowed to allow the team to beat someone as a discipline tactic. Like, you know, and this is something that we see in a lot of books and a lot of films is that the teachers that have the most impact are not operating within the rules. And a lot of times then they leave because,
Yeah.
you know, probably what we're not seeing in that documentary is how many times he's getting memos in his folder and nasty emails
good
from his
point.
administrator and stuff like that saying you can't do this, you can't do this, you can't do this. And it, you know, like people talk about burnout in teaching, but I am a high school teacher. It's not, it's not burnout in the traditional sense.
Right.
You know, like in other professions, you have burnout because you just get so tired and it just wears you down and it's so much work. Teaching is always a huge amount of work for a very small amount of money, and everybody knows that. Going into it, you know, that's not a shock or a surprise. I think and Brad, you can maybe speak to this too, like what a lot of times where you see really good teachers fleeing the profession is because, okay, I want to help people and you are not letting me. So
Yeah.
I'm going to go
Yeah,
find
yeah.
a job where I can. He's going to
Absolutely.
be a lawyer.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, thank you for saying that.
Yeah, and we saw that. I mean, that was a sort of message throughout the weekend. A little bit of it. I mean, we saw it in the public as well. I mean, all we want to do is help people, and we're being told we can't.
Right.
You know, it's
That was the main theme of Island of Hungry
yeah,
Ghosts. as well.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
I thought they introduced us to the demographics, the underserved population,
Yeah.
the student population, and from their vantage point, from being pulled over for a dim taillight to
Yeah, what is even a dimmed tail light? That's
Yeah,
not
that
a
was
thing.
so-
You either have a tail light or it's out.
Excuse to pull you
It's an
over.
excuse that you're driving while black, is
Right.
what that is.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And there were many examples like that, and I think that was really well done.
Well, I heard nothing but good things about this.
Yeah,
doc while
Russell
I
was
there, and
a hit.
Yeah, so
Stephen Clefman from Four Color Fantasies went and saw Fugue. And did you see Fugue? Good. Maybe then go ahead and talk. No, then jump in because I was going to give you his comments. He was a thumbs up on that on Fugue. He said style and visually beautiful. He struggled a little bit with the story, but I think like visually he was impressed with the movie.
I would agree. Yeah, I went and saw Fugue because it was the same director
As The Lure.
of The Lure, which
Right.
is one of my all-time favorite
Wait, what?
movies.
Yeah.
Really?
Son of a I only yelled that 100 times, Billy, during the whole thing.
I don't listen to anybody but my own brain.
I also deliberately didn't tell him that when I read it in the description because I knew I'd lose him then.
Worlds were against you, man.
Manipulated.
It's a wildly different story. Like there are no like fantastical elements. It's about a woman who enters a fugue state for like 2 years, and then her family from before finds her.
Whoa.
And it's about her old identity and her new identity, like kind of competing with each other. And she's like, how do I readjust to life? So nothing obvious in common with the lore, but there is a certain like tone and feel and like visual style that is similar. Like I could tell it was directed by the same person. Like,
Gotcha.
I could see the through line. Yeah, I don't know if there's a lot more to say about it other than it was a really well done film.
Directed by a female, which is, again, something that we like to highlight throughout the weekend and that sort of thing as well. So,
Girls did well with this.
they did. Wrestle was a twofer. 2 women, I think, directed that.
And Fiddlin.
Fiddlin was as well.
And speaking of Fiddlin,
Which we should get into that.
we
right?
should get into that, yes, because we had in attendance the subjects Presley Barker and Wayne Henderson, amazing fiddlin talents.
Did anyone know who Wayne Henderson was prior to this event?
Nope.
Okay.
I knew what a Henderson guitar was, but
Yeah.
I didn't know who he was, if that made any sense.
Right.
Yeah.
And so we all got to watch the documentary, and then we were rewarded by the experience even further by having Wayne and Presley perform for us after the show, which was incredible.
Can we get just a quick show of hands? Presley Barker, best ever.
Yeah.
Oh, such a sweetheart. Oh my God.
Amazing.
Yeah, amazing.
And not just a musician, but a true showman.
Yeah.
Agree.
Everything.
And gentleman.
Kind.
Really
Very
kind.
Super
soul,
kind.
Yeah, and the story between Wayne and Presley is so beautiful, and the fact that Wayne says, you need to, if you're going to stay in this field, if you're going to be a musician, learn to sing. And so all of a sudden, I think we were getting to hear him sing, his voice coming out, and it was beautiful.
And
it was well done.
It was a much different experience to have them there than
Yes.
seeing him on screen, because that Merle Haggard song, I was starstruck by that point in time, because I knew about his, we knew about his singing from prior and that sort of thing as well, but just to have it there live and then to see in more reality the connection between he and Wayne, especially in a performance setting, was amazing. I mean, from my vantage, the two of them were smiling. They knew when each chord was going to hit almost perfectly. And there are bands that can't do that, and they've been touring for 20 years, So I don't know.
And they loved each other. Which
They
is-
did love
Oh my
each
God,
other.
it's so sweet to watch that.
But what about the film itself, Fiddlin?
I want to go to the Fiddlin Festival now. I would've
Galax,
never said that
Virginia,
prior.
not too far from us, 5 hours southwest. And we can make that happen. We can do a film club road trip. I'd love to do it.
Because you were saying earlier, tickets are.
Well, they're like $7 or $10. It's
Really?
Wait, what?
It's ridiculously cheap to go watch.
How much
Yeah.
is
To go watch.
camp,
I
though?
think it's like $100 to camp for the like 5 or 6 days.
That's not
But
bad.
for me, you asked about the film itself. I love the music. We've been down to that area. I'm totally enamored with it. We've seen some of those people again, the woman with the red lipstick and the cowgirl hat and everything. To me, the film lost a little pace. There were times where, as much as I loved the subject, I loved the music, I wish the pace had been. I just felt it drug just a little bit.
Yeah, I found myself obviously gravitating towards Presley and Wayne.
Right.
And I think you needed to have context of what the experiences at going to Galax, and you needed to know the history of old time music and bluegrass.
Right.
But I found myself, once we met those two, I wanted to just live with them in the documentary.
Yeah.
And to me, one of the most compelling people was the woman, I think she played the bass, who was talking how she was, again, struggling in life, with depression and drug, all these things. And how music, the backstory of how music had saved her.
Oh, yeah.
That was powerful. But again, I just found these I don't know.
And it almost felt as if we, like, I'll go back. I really enjoyed the documentary, so but it almost felt as if they were like we were discovering with them
Yes.
as it was. So it was like, hey, let's go down and start filming this fiddle festival, and then we'll see where we go from there. And we started discovering person after person, and then we discovered. Who Wayne and who Presley were, and then it was a unique. I don't know if they fully knew if they wanted to continue with Wayne or Presley or continue back towards the Fiddle Festival. That's where I think like we started seeing that structure, sort of like. And again, that could be just first time documentary filmmaker if that's the case. I don't know that.
When we talked to her.
Vicky Flassick.
Yeah, right. She said that they actually followed several other people who were not ultimately in the documentary, and that they gravitated as well to Presley's story and his connection with Wayne.
They had 100 hours of footage to edit into that movie.
To 97 minutes or something.
Right. So a Herculean task for sure, and well done.
And I think it's as a documentarian, I think it proves that it's essential to know what you want your documentary to be exactly, because I think they had a lot of ground to cover in order to tell the history, to help show that connection and explain why that generational link up is so relevant and so emotional and so poignant to what it is that they're doing in terms of preserving a legacy and a style of music.
A national treasure.
Yeah.
And an extremely unique film to watch at Lost Weekend, and not a lot of people have that opportunity right now. They just got distribution for the film, so it will start showing up elsewhere. They're only beginning their journey with the movie. And we were one of the first stops for them. So
we were Jen and I discovered it at the Virginia Film Festival down in Charlottesville. We went down to see Biggest Little Farm and grabbed a program and just happened to see this movie about fiddling. We did a little bit of research on it and then wrote and was able to connect. And what was interesting is that talking to Vicky and Presley and Presley's mom and Wayne after the screening, they were like, this is the biggest screen we've ever had this movie on. This is, like, they were in all of the entire event as a whole, but then, like, you could see in their heads, like, we didn't realize this was going to get to be where we are right now, and that sort of thing as well. And Presley, I think, is completely overwhelmed by what's going on with this movie in a good way. Like, I can't believe this is happening. So.
And then having the opportunity to go up to the VIP room with him.
He did.
We did an interview on the podcast with all three of them, and we transitioned into the interview with Emilio Estevez. And Presley needed to stay so he could experience meeting Emilio.
Presley's reading The Outsiders in high school right now. And so he really wanted to meet Emilio Estevez. And Emilio actually came down because I invited him to come play, because I knew of Wayne Henderson. So Wayne, Presley was a great grab because he was in the film. I did not think Wayne Henderson was going to come up. And when he said yes, that to me, like, as a Virginia boy, I was just like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And no offense to Presley in any way, shape, or form, but I've read the stories of who Wayne Henderson is. And the fact that there's a 10-year waiting list on his guitars is
$25,000 a guitar could get.
Costs. I mean, it's in the fact that you talk to him and you could tell that he lives in this, like, classic, house that we all sort of live in. He doesn't seem like someone who's making $25K on a guitar. And I had to call him. I couldn't email him. I had to call him. He was like, hello, is this Wayne there? And it was like, this is him. I would like you to come up into the Alamo and hang out. I guess I could do that. Send me a letter and let me know when you want me to come. And it was like, well, I can email you. It's just a paperweight over here, Andy. I don't even know if it works. And I was just like, how are you selling $25,000 guitars if that's the case? And so I sent him a letter, and I never heard back from him. And then I got a message from Presley's mom that's like, he was coming. So I called Wayne. I was like, you coming up? He's like, it is a long drive, but I'm going to make it. It's going to be good. And then, I sent it. He came up, and he left that same night. Like, I got him a room. I had everything taken care of for him, and he went ahead and left because he was just so honored to come up and be a part of this, but then wanted to sleep in his own bed. I think is what it was.
And then to see all our celebrity guests meet,
Gather
and gather and really enjoy the company of each other was really cool.
And I've got to tell you, like, for me, that was a unique festival experience for me. Like, there's a lot of things that aren't necessarily firsts every time we do it. Like, we run a lot of movies, so I'm used to sort of hearing people say, like, I'm tired, I'm exhausted, and that sort of thing as well. And then for me, on the back end of it, I'm doing a lot of the same sort of motions and runnings and that sort of thing as well. But to finally have our new little VIP area, which we can eventually take you all up to, we got some new lights up there. It looks great. But to have Emilio, Presley, Wayne, and then Al come up there and all be a part of sort of that room, it made me feel like we were doing something slightly bigger than what we had done for the 10 lost weekends prior, which was pretty wild. Like, for me, it was like a moment where I was stepping outside of myself a little bit and being like, I've connected these people who are ultimately going to remember this moment for the rest of their lives. And Emilio came down because when he got in, I was telling him about Presley being in town, and he didn't know who he was, and he didn't know who Wayne Henderson was. It was like, you're going to love this. And I could see Emilio on the side. He was at the screening. He was down in the side wing, not the one we all come in, but the one the servers come through. Yes. And he was watching. And when that Merle Haggard song came on, his phone shot up, and he recorded that thing. And when he was coming back up afterwards, I was like, Presley's up here. Do you mind if you want to meet him? And he was just like, do you think he wants to meet me? Like, it was that sort of honest, like, he was like, I would love to. And he gave him a CD, and like, we were up in that room until like 1 o'clock, and his main thing for the Universal person that was with him was like, you got to make sure I got that CD. Like, that's the only thing I got to worry about right now is the CD. And then he did a great Outsiders thing for Presley as well.
Yeah, for his
school project.
Yeah. A little short video.
He asked him if he was a mod or a soc.
Greaser
or soc.
Yeah.
And so,
yes.
So I wanted to ask whoever, Andy maybe, so do you think that they'll continue with like that package thing when they continue on with the movie as they distributing the film, or however that works? Like, have it be an offer where they'll have Wayne and Presley be with them, or now does everybody go their separate ways?
I mean,
like, you made that.
They didn't offer it as a package to us. So for me, I inquired if there were any guests available, and then she connected me. She said, well, because it was a Virginia-based film, this was easier for me, because I was just like, oh, let's see if we can get some of these guys here. If they're in the state, let's try to figure out how to make this possible. And so, like, she connected me with Presley, and then Presley's mom, and then Presley's mom was like, we may be able to get Wayne to come up as well. And I was just like, yes. Now, so that was an outside package. There's nothing to hide with this. It's all self-explanatory. We covered the costs of Presley, and Presley's, he's a musician, and so I'm not one to ask someone to come and play for free. That doesn't make any sense. It's like asking an artist to give me their work for free. So we asked him what his going rate was, which I think was kind of nice, and we charged whatever he invoiced us for whatever the amount was that he normally would charge for a performance and that sort of thing. Because I want to make sure, like, he's getting paid for the work that he's doing, so that he can be like, this is an appreciative sort of thing.
Yeah. Like, I guess I just wondered, like, more from like.
But I think they try to package them together.
Out, that they saw that maybe that enhanced it, and maybe that would be a sort of a dynamic they would want to create into the future for future festivals.
Vicky said that they'd had screenings with Presley before, and they'd had I think a screening with Wayne before, but this was the first time they were able to do it together.
Okay, gotcha.
I'm sure that she would love to drag them all around the country together, but that might be more.
It's tricky just with two schedules. I mean, Presley was still in school, so I mean, we couldn't do it on Sunday. We couldn't do Fiddlin' really on Friday. It had to have been Saturday for them to get up here after school and kind of go from there. I mean, I think Wayne is just he's got a lot of work he's doing, so I think he was like, I gotta get back down to the shop and that sort of thing as well.
Very lucky to have them.
Yeah.
Thank
you. Yeah.
And I think for other places, I mean, I think that they would probably do it, but you have to look at the overall cost. I mean, from the back end of it, from the business side of things, as we talk about it, it's if I bring these guys, if I fly them out and they charge us appearance fee, how much do I have to charge to recoup all of that cost and that sort of thing as well? And so it's a tricky sort of thing.
This film or a film like this would play as well in Washington State or Utah or Florida as it does.
I had that thought as well. I'm not sure.
Or is this a regional?
I'm not sure. Yeah.
Well, you know, I think, first of all, Virginia needs to embrace this film. I think, absolutely. I think the Virginia Film Festival or Virginia Film Agency should be 100% behind this. I think it's got the potential to push out. I think North Carolina, West Virginia, Tennessee, Kentucky, those sort of bluegrass areas, absolutely. Would you do like bonkers business in like Portland, Oregon? I don't know. But I don't know if you needed to. I mean, I don't know if that's necessarily important. I do think it would do well overseas, though. Overseas audiences absolutely love the idea of country music, bluegrass, and that sort of thing.
How many folks from overseas were in the film itself?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and you see that with a lot of docs that have to do with music. We've played several music docs, and so.
I think with the right marketing, it would have widespread appeal to parents.
Right.
Because a lot of the film is about youth and music and music lessons for children, and no, it's not just having to scream at your kid every afternoon, practice your piano, maybe piano wasn't for them, but look at all of these other instruments. It would never have occurred to me to put a banjo in a 7-year-old's hands, but they show you that there are other things out there. So I do actually think it would play well in Portland if you marketed it that way.
Yeah, good point.
All right, so we're crossing over the 2-hour mark. I just want to make sure that we're
For the second half?
No. It's 2 hours total.
Oh,
2 hours total.
Jesus.
We've been sitting here, but I don't want to trap everybody.
2 hours for the
I just want to make sure that we're hitting the things that we want to talk about. Next up was A Breath Away and Styx. Any passionate fans of A Breath Away and Styx?
Man, I loved A Breath Away.
All right, Danielle, let's hear it.
I loved A Breath Away. I went into it, to be perfectly honest, with the intention of holding a seat.
Yeah.
Because wanted to see Fiddler and I wanted to see Public, and so I didn't want to lose my seat. So I was like, all right, I'm going to stay for this.
That's how we win them every time.
That's how you get it. But I thought it was going to be The Fog in Paris, and I was not excited about that because I didn't like The Fog in the United States. But it was not that at all, and I really connected with the movie and with the characters. I loved that the parents were not romantically engaged with each other at all. Because I feel like a lot of times in movies where you have divorced parents, it's like, oh, look, they're falling back in love, and and then it becomes like this weird romance, and that's not what you're there to see. But they were, just totally a team dedicated to taking care of their child, and so I loved that, and I love that they separated repeatedly. So the mom, it was another action mom movie.
Yeah,
she
it
had,
was.
yeah, it was action parents. But they didn't do this thing like, she's helpless and he's having to do all the adventure and all the ass kicking. Like, she was out there just as much as he was, and I thought it was really cool. And there was so much suspense in the film because you had no idea what was happening or why it was happening. And even I remember there's a scene pretty early on where he's just trying to figure out, is the fog or the mist, as they call it in the movie, is it toxic if you breathe it, or like can it burn you? And they show him trying to okay, well, how do I stick my hand in this? And it was really neat. I loved it.
Yeah.
It very easily could have been water,
Yeah.
because it was kind of a liquid,
Yeah.
almost. Like it was very heavy gas that just and then you find out that it's because it's very, it's toxic to breathe, but you can walk through it if you can hold your breath long enough.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that. What really appealed to me about this film was that it didn't bog itself down at an hour and 20 some odd minutes with the minutia of why and the science of what's going on. What I appreciated, that it wasn't someone trying to save the city.
Mm-hmm.
It was someone just trying to survive in this new radical environment that no one was prepared for. I didn't need a reason as to why they were getting divorced. Yeah. It was what it was, and that was perfect for me. And I didn't need a reason as to where the mist came from. It just was what it was. We've got to survive through it. And I thought that was... Oh, yes.
Yeah, but why?
True. Great answer right there.
That was enough answer.
Yeah,
In fact,
that was it.
I believe we saw another film this Lost Weekend that has that same sort of response as well, but didn't quite do it the same way. Is that correct, Brad?
Yeah, that's correct. It's correct. It's correct. Yes, I'm not going to talk about it.
This actually, for me, I totally agree, and I did the exact same thing about why I chose that film, because as far as my little dots in my program, I had actually put a dot. Well, actually, I was like either way, because I was trying to say, well, do I want to make my decision logistically, or or like try to figure out which film I would like better. And it sort of spoke to, in my view, how sold I am on the format for Lost Weekend now itself, is that, and this is something, Andy's like so good to me as far as like, I'm kind of an angsty person or an anxious person a little bit, and he always dissipates that for me. So
he's a comic
and so something he had said, he said, there's really not going to be any bad choices, really. And certainly that's subjective from his standpoint and stuff, but I found that to be true. I mean, it's like, a little bit of a sales element perhaps, but I had so many moments throughout Lost Weekend where I ended up in a film that I hadn't originally planned to, or something, or made a choice based on logistics, and I was so pleasantly surprised, and not to say that I loved every single one, but I was never sorry that I had seen any of the ones that I had seen.
Right. Thank you.
Well, you're welcome. Even Starfish. I wasn't sorry that I saw it. I just was felt incapable of. But anyway,
well, we're getting there.
I'm sorry. I was like,
we'll be there by tomorrow.
Yeah. Anybody wanted to talk about Sticks? I didn't see Sticks.
I would encourage you to hunt it down, please. It's really good.
Hunt it down.
Yeah,
it's great.
It sounded good.
Okay, all right. We will. Well, let's get to the other celebrity screening of the day. Emilio Estevez, writer, director, producer, star of The Public. This I had the opportunity to watch it twice. And again, like we were talking about with Us on the last episode, it was a movie where I got done with it and I was like, okay, yeah, I like most of what they're saying there. I think I get that. That sounds good. And then on the second watch, and bolstered by the attendance of the writer, director, star, producer, I really got into the movie much more on the second go around and appreciated it more. But this idea that libraries have become an institution to shelter and care for the city's homeless is something that I have experienced, Billy has experienced as booksellers at Barnes & Noble, that there is not enough space on this planet for the people who need it. And I was happy to see a film address that in some way, even though I wish it had explored maybe like the mental health side of that story as well. But as is, I think it's an important movie. I hate to say important movies, but it's certainly a conversation that we need to have as a society.
And I watched it as a screener first, and then with an audience. And I'm here to say that this is a theater movie. It's a movie to sit with an unsuspecting audience and to hear the reaction, and then to have people talk about it afterwards. It was impressive to have librarians in the screening. I went on both sides of the screenings, and even the one that only had probably about 60 people in it were having the same sort of they were laughing at the right times, they were enjoying it, and that sort of thing as well. I love that it tackles three things to me. It's the tackling of the homeless, it has the tackling of libraries, and then we were talking about our civic duty, how to be active in making sure that what you believe is something that you're doing on a regular basis, civics, so to speak, up with it all.
It takes on a lot.
It does. And, I think if I were to say anything to Emilio, and I'm always happy to say that to him, it would be, I think the runtime is a little bit rough, the 2 hours, 2 minutes. But that's the only thing. I mean, I think the message is absolutely clear. I think the message is palatable, meaning that anyone from a young person to an adult would fully understand it. And the PG-13 rating that they fought for is outstanding, because that opens the door to more people experiencing this film. And maybe someone bringing their family to see it because it's PG-13 versus R. So, yeah. I like the cast. I think he picked a great cast for it.
How could you not like the cast? It's crazy, yeah. It's a huge cast. Anybody else want to jump in on the public?
I'm not gonna, I know we're not, no spoilers.
Yes.
That's the rule, golden rule.
That's right, golden rule on it, bud.
Yeah, but for me, this is my own personal spoiler, was so many films that I'll say based on a true story. And so I'm thinking, oh, this is based on a true story. So I go to, look it up on Google and okay, when did this happen? And did it really happen in Cincinnati or Cleveland?
Cincinnati, yeah.
Cincinnati, and what year, and how did I miss that one too, kind of thing. And the fact that it hadn't struck me.
Well, that it is happening everywhere.
And that it is
Just
happening,
being
and it was,
talked about.
yes, it was a discussion versus a specific event on a specific day in a specific town. And it all took place in the social studies department.
Right, yeah.
You always saw that over the
right.
library.
Yeah, it's a what if film. It's there. Someone says it in the movie that there's this situation already is like we are already caring for the homeless. We are already social workers for these people. So why not we just make that a mission statement? And how that's being experimented on in different settings, like in San Francisco right now that Amelia was talking about, bringing social workers into libraries to take care of individuals who need it. I think we need to have these what if questions, and we need to find unique and experimental solutions to help our fellow humans.
Yeah, for me, it's like a Christmas tree. There's so many different issues you could hang on to this discussion, And to me, it's not what if, it's how do we? Because it is happening. You go to the Hanley Library, go to any library in this nation, and it's homelessness, it's veterans, it's disabilities, it's all these stereotypes of how we frame people. And again, to my bigger fear, because we all see it in our own context, is my concern about us moving to the fringes as opposed to coming to the middle and having some of these discussions. And I'm really hoping that that's what he's generating out of this. I think that seems to be his intent with this 30-city visit. We're literally living in the middle of it.
Yeah. I think the greatest thing it does ultimately is I don't think you can walk away from that film and not have a conversation with the person you walked in with about the subject.
That's a good point.
And whether the film achieves what you want it to be achieving is almost beside the point. It's more about talking to Billy afterwards, talking to Lisa afterwards, or you guys afterwards about the situation that we all see every day, and especially if you walk into a library.
You live and work in Washington, D.C., and when the polar vortex hits and it's 0 degrees and I don't want to walk out to my car, I know the next day I'll see people in the city on the streets, and this is what they're dealing with overnight. And it's horrible, and I don't know what the answers are, and I don't know how to start.
I feel like we've accepted so much already of this is just how it is for these people. Good luck to them.
And I think it is a movie that oftentimes we think about librarians in a certain light. Like the cinematic librarian is that older lady sitting behind the desk shushing people, and the keeper of information versus the sharer of information. And so I really appreciated that we were seeing a variety of different people playing the role of the librarian. Someone with a different ethnic background, a younger woman, a very outspoken younger woman, and then Emilio with his sort of troubled past. I mean, it was nice to sort of break that boundary of what a librarian is in today's sort of society and put that out. Correct. Serve. Yeah.
Well, and I think that's why he's connecting so strongly, and why his screenings for the ALA were so successful is because I think he very clearly approached the idea and the story of the movie from making sure that he captures their experience accurately and fleshes them out as, like you said, more than just the person behind the desk that shushes people.
Yeah.
I had conversations with people who did not respond as positively towards it as I did, reacting with, I would say, a lot of cynicism towards the film and feeling like it was heavy-handed storytelling. But I gotta say, yes, it is a very sincere movie, and moments of its sincerity really did get to me. There's that moment where he responds to Gabrielle Union's reporter by quoting the grapes of wrath, right? And I mean, it is like the most movie kind of response in that situation. And he gets done, and you know, I love Steinbeck. I love Grapes of Wrath. So, you know, as a book lover, it definitely works on me. He's speaking to me. But the moment in that scene that really sold it to me, which again is like a very sincere, and you could be very dismissive of it if you wanted to, is when Jeffrey Wright's librarian comes up to him and says, good words. And, you know, Emilio says, well, I wish they were mine.
Yeah.
And he responds, well, they are yours, and they are theirs, and they are theirs.
Yeah.
Like, suddenly I'm like crying in the public. And for that moment alone, I'm like, well, this movie is like, this is it for me. I love this movie. But yes, it's speaking to a lot, and I don't think it can address all of the things at the same level.
And my regret was inquiring more about the polar bear, not in my Q&A, because
Barry White.
Yeah, which I appreciated because we talked about the civic nature of things. We talked about libraries. We talked about the homeless. But I felt like that was yet another jab towards what we're doing in our world and how we're destroying the homes of animals on a regular basis, specifically the polar bears that are out there. And that was just, he sort of ended on the shot of the polar bear. And for me, it was like, we're destroying nature in the process of all of this as well. And here we have a creature that's almost gone extinct because it doesn't have home anymore. Where does that relate within the bigger story that we're talking about? And I was going to bring that up, but I had this feeling like perhaps I was overthinking that part slightly a bit too much.
I had not thought about that at all, Andy.
But there was a reason he put it in there. I mean, there's a reason that whole thing was in there.
There's a line referencing it where he says, like, we are polar bears now.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But that animals is the same metaphor that the Island of Hungry Ghosts uses, right? Is our emotional reaction to what's going on with these crabs or what's going on to the polar bears.
Crab
and
migration.
How can we help them and all that sort of stuff. And then you put that juxtaposed right at your emotional state juxtaposed against what do you think about the homeless and how can we help them? And what do you think about people seeking asylum in Australia and how can you help them?
No, I'll just end with like...
Dead farms?
Dead
soil in the farm?
Exactly.
And, I'll end with the fact that how humbling it was just to have Emilio come through. I mean, so often, here is someone, again, from sort of like movie royalty, to kind of come through and discover that at what could be a point where he doesn't necessarily have to do anything anymore, but really grassroots and see that passion and love come through. I never in a million years would have ever said when we started Lost Weekend that we would ever have Emilio Estevez come. I was always like, it's going to be like, it will be these sort of smaller directors. It'll be sort of, and when he listens to this, my apologies to you, Al White, but sort of the Al White, these little unknown directors that we're highlighting and giving the stuff to. And I thought that was really powerful and unique, not just because then it engaged the audience a little bit more, but it just was sort of like Emilio Estevez is like a genuine, like he wants this movie out there.
It's powerfully surreal as a film fan to be in a theater listening to Andy Gyurisin ask the guy from Young Guns and The Outsiders and Repo Man and Men at Work and all these movies that I cherish to such a degree that I could never mention them to that person. and I didn't because I would have become a puddle. But to have you chatting with him up there about his film, him relaying his passion for the subject to us, being so genuine, as genuine as his movie seems to be, is like Lost Weekend. Like, oh my God.
Well, what was crazy is that day, the second track was all sponsored by my dad's business. And so in several things I was talking about, it was just very surreal for me because throughout the day I was just like nonchalantly talking about how impressed I am with what my dad does and who my dad is and that sort of thing. And then to have like him talking so powerfully about his dad and that sort of thing as well.
Yeah.
That to me was like, and then, the casual family conversations and that sort of thing as well.
The great surprise of the public was how, it took 13 years to become a movie.
Yeah.
Right.
And how his father's activism influenced where his character would go.
Did you hear that audience shout when he said he was arrested 68 times or something like that?
Yeah.
We know Martin Sheen. I know who Martin Sheen is from what he's done. I've never heard someone say that before based on what he's done and that sort of thing. But that was, and I was in every way starstruck by the entire thing. I treat people as if they're people, but I would shake shake his hand, and we were talking. It was very nice. And then when he came out for the Q&A and gave me a hug, I'm surprised I even got through that Q&A because I don't know if you watched that video or not, but I'm almost like not wanting to touch him because I'm like, it could be a little rough. But then later on that night, he said goodbye, and I was just like, don't let go, Emilio. Don't let go. But I had my final, it was interesting. It's interesting talking to Al, and it's interesting talking to Emilio because they're very not sure how their programs or their films are going to land.
Right.
Both of them are very similar in the sense of we hope people like it. I don't know how it's going to do. I hope people like it. And that's difficult for me to hear because I sometimes want people to be like, this is amazing. I love, I want them to have that sort of energy that I have when I'm talking about those movies because I can only see it as this has got to be great for them. And so my last excitable thing that I did that I was just I got to do this is that when I said goodbye, I shook Emilio's hand and I pulled him in and I was just your movie's fucking amazing and don't let anyone tell you otherwise. And I looked him in the eye and he's like, thanks, dude. And then he drove away and I was just because I want people to realize that their hard work is paying off. I realize there's a financial element to it that stress and burdens you as you put these projects out, but that's hard work. That's something I could never do. Yeah. And so to have someone sort of be I hope, I'm going to be come on, it is. It's going to be successful. And it may not be successful in terms of dollars, but it's going to be successful if you have one person walk into their library and say, I want to help make a change. Yeah. So.
Yeah.
And I think we really... much to your credit, the benefit of Rescue Mission being tied to this, and I don't know that it was planned as much as it was just a brilliant coupling, and it was clear that we were trying to do, and you were trying to lead us to do something.
And I invited right before we invited. Brandon from the Rescue Mission and John Huddy from the library system up to the VIP room. I think you guys were up there at that time. And they did a nice mingle and talk, the three of them together. And I thought that was important to bring those three together prior to the screening so that during the Q&A he could say Brandon from the Rescue Mission or John from the Hanley Library and have that immediate connection to our community here in this area. And, the other thing that I think was really great is that this movie has been on my radar for 2 years, longer than that even probably. But we sat down with the Rescue Mission in early December. Early January after I had gotten the message from Emilio that he was thinking about coming and that sort of thing. And I sat down with Brandon and I said, Brandon, I'd like to do it because if this film was going to work, this would be the perfect pairing. And then what I thought was pretty impressive was that before I said anything, Brandon was like, yes, I want to be involved. I'd love to do this film festival. If there's any way you could get the public here, I would love to do it. And that was without me prompting anything because he had been following the information of Emilio's film and the excitement for it. And John Huddy was pushing for it as well. He had been emailing me for a long time trying to get this film to this community. So, to hear that and then to tell Emilio, your grassroots is working, dude. Yeah. The message is getting out there about that.
And to your point, awesome. The movie is just the beginning of a conversation. And, we need to continue it.
Can I have one other thought?
Yes, please.
Yeah. So one is I think about how do we leverage it into university libraries.
Yes.
I know we were talking about public libraries where we're actually seeing this, but in the university libraries where the youth are going to be the leaders of our communities, are starting to grow. And then the second thing to me was just a real evidence of where power lies.
Yes,
and that
absolutely.
We, the people, were able to challenge the institution and essentially won, whether we were arrested or not.
Right.
And how I love the guy who led the library, the director of the library.
Jeffrey Wright.
Yeah,
Jeffrey Wright,
he essentially joined the movement.
Yes.
And again, even when you see somebody in this position of authority, their roots lie somewhere.
Yeah.
And maybe it's simple.
There was a reason he became a librarian.
Maybe he had been homeless. Who knows? It didn't come out that way. But anyway, so it's just another movie, another right movie for the right time.
Yes,
kind of
agreed.
And we talk about the synergy, and I will move on because I know time is there, but we talk about the synergy of people to certain things. And I equate Emilio Estevez to libraries. I mean, it's from the Breakfast Club time that I sort of equate him and his knowledge. Like when we found out he was coming, the very first thing I did was eBay. I was looking on eBay for those classic Reed posters because I was like, Emilio must have done a Reed poster because I wanted to print them and put them around the Alamo and that sort of thing as well. But there was nothing of it, and I was just sort of like, I love that here we are, 40 or 50, 35 years later, and he's back in a library again, and there's something that's, I think, really unique to it. And he wouldn't talk about it, but I think he knew what he was doing with that. I think there was some small inkling that if he could connect the two, the fan base could potentially follow or put something there. Sure. Maybe. I'm probably wrong, and I'll get a call from
That's
Universal
good cross-marketing for sure. Okay. Let's moving on. Oh, secret screening.
We can talk about.
Don't want to miss the secret screening. We can't talk about it at all.
We can.
We can.
Yeah, you can talk about secret screening.
Oh, okay. So we all watched Cutterhead.
Right.
Damn, this movie was it was an intense watch.
Yeah.
And I went back and forth over how I felt about everybody involved, minute to minute. It's about French, right? It was where was the
German?
location? Was it? I don't want to get this wrong.
I'm going to look it up. Keep going.
They are constructing a metro tunnel, and they are in this massive drill that is hollowing out the earth.
A cutterhead, so to speak.
A cutterhead. And it's about one woman who works for the company who is chronicling the
Danish.
Does she work for the company?
She's a newspaper person.
Doing the murals
She was an artist, but why is she writing the paper?
I think she just wanted more of their personal story with the murals.
Is that what it was?
I thought it was more of a PR thing for some things.
I thought it was PR as well.
Yeah, but she just tied that in with the murals. That, by the way, I did this too. I think.
It's about a woman who is at least chronicling the stories of the workers that are in the drill.
Yeah, perfect.
And what I loved about setting up her character, and they do it in fairly short order, is she's not fully engaged with the workers. She doesn't fully understand what they are. Well, she certainly doesn't understand what they're doing.
No.
And she doesn't know the types of people who are down there, and she can't penetrate their barrier that they have created between the two classes, basically. And so she's trying to document, so is it like this? And she's asking yes/no questions, and she's formulating her article without getting any actual answers. Yeah. And then all hell breaks loose. She's trapped at the front of the Cutterhead after some kind of catastrophic explosion separates her from the rest of the people in the drill and kills a whole bunch of people. And it's 3 people trapped in a decompression tank at the head of the Cutterhead. And they have to learn how to survive down there without any communication with the outside world. And the terror that sinks in for all 3 of them. Incredibly tense movie experience. And
at a lean 84 minutes or something like that.
Yeah. I don't know. Did people like it? Was it too intense?
It elicited feelings like you were there, you were them, you were pissed off at her and then him, and so many feelings. I don't know what to do with the feelings. I'm still processing from that movie, days later.
Yeah. And that there's a final scene, without spoiling it, that will linger for days. And I wouldn't say it's a final scene, but it's a final 2 segments of the film that is an immensely powerful and yet surprising maybe 5 minutes of movie.
Another film that deals with the refugee issue in Europe. And I think everything you learn about her at the beginning of the film, when she's taking down the stories of these workers, sets up really how we all look down to the people who are working for us to build our societies, and the level of respect or lack thereof that we have, or even just the general understanding that we have for those people. And so, yes, she was an unlikable character, but I think she was there to represent us And,
Us, you say?
Yeah, us.
The other us.
The other us.
And it hinted very well, it paired very well with our claustrophobic Danish film from last weekend, if we remember that, where we were stuck in one room with one character as he phone called his way into it all right there. And so it was programmed eerily, very similarly, time-wise and that sort of thing, for specific purposes.
Tip of the hat to Andy Gyurisin.
I know how much people enjoyed The Guilty, and while The Guilty is a film within itself, I'm not going to recreate that wheel again. I loved this movie. Wow, I was introduced to this movie from Ron Carlson, who saw it in a film festival overseas. He connected me with the director, and we were able to put together this secret screening specifically for this audience. And it had its opening weekend on March 21st. In Denmark, I should say. So I'll show you how impressive this was.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you, Andy.
I would encourage everyone to hunt down Cutterhead. It's going to start hitting festival circuits now, or relatively soon, and it's something that I would love to sit in an unsuspecting audience again and just watch it.
And once again, another film where when it ended, I had to process it. I had to take a day to think about it before I settled on, like, yeah, that was great.
But I'm going to go back to the idea of what it was as a theatrical experience. I mean, as an outsider, I stood on the side while everyone watched this, and it was as if nobody was breathing at all. It was, I mean, we had just finished Emilio. There was an energy and an aura surrounding that sort of like moment right there. And I don't know if there was a deflate, though. I mean, I think it was like
an emotional deflate.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, it was like the theater was like the quietest I had ever heard it, like the entire weekend from that screening right there.
Yeah, I can attest to that.
And I don't know if a title like Cutterhead, if I would have announced what the title was or anything like that, would have done it.
Well, I loved how we really
as to
didn't know the title of the movie until the end when
Right.
it popped up in the credits. So you're watching this film. It was a true secret screening experience where, and it starts in darkness, and you hear some grumbling.
Yeah, I did too.
Everybody had to think,
What's
you're watching this?
Like, damn,
it's not
what's
working.
And then you're just watching the story, and you're trying to figure out, like, well, what type of genre is this? What am I about? What am I getting into? What has Andy forced upon us? And then you learn, and you're like, silence.
Yeah.
Stressed.
Yeah.
Okay, so, we finished out the night at midnight. I was too stressed after Cutterhead. I had to go to bed. But so I missed Family and The Dead Center. Anybody want to highlight either of those?
Family. I stayed for like an hour, and then I was like, sleep is needed.
And what you think, MK? Great.
Yeah. One thing, like the director, what was her name again, Andy?
Veronica Kedar, Kedar, I think is who it is.
She is the star, writer, director, and editor of this film. Like, this is a hard movie, and it's a very personal story about like family drama in like the worst possible relationship you could possibly have with each member of your family. She has all of those relationships. And without going into any specifics as to what those relationships are, you get, like, it focuses on one member of the family, and then after that story is kind of closed, it moves on to the next member. And the story of what is happening with her family is kind of framed by this conversation that she's having with the daughter of her therapist, because she breaks into her, she doesn't break in, but she visits her therapist's home in the middle of the night because she wants to explain why she just killed her family.
Sure, I can get that. I mean, you gotta talk about it.
And that was in our, like, that was in the program. That is not spoiling anything. You go in knowing that she killed her family.
I think it was even the image that Andy projected onto the screen to signify what type of movie you're watching.
Right.
Good stuff.
And then the character is a photographer, so like there's this like running theme of like taking photographs of each of her family members after she has killed them for a family portrait contest.
Richard considered this a comedy, by the way.
Did he?
Yes, that's what he said.
It was funny?
I don't know if I would call it comedy.
It was a psycho
But it
cinema
was
comedy.
funny.
Yeah.
Yes, sure.
And this I'd go back to. I don't know if we will ever see it again. I mean, it
Psycho
07.
cinema should air it.
07 or 2017 release, and it's still festivaling it up right now. So it's interesting. I felt like it was like I was watching Girl Walks Home Alone at Night in that same sort of vein and that same sort of energy and excitement for the first time with this film. And again, it's an Israeli woman or a woman from Israel, from Tel Aviv, making this story. And she was like, to me, that's already impressive based on the culture that's being presented, and then to have this story come out of it, I think was pretty impressive. It's like when we watched Under the Shadow several lost weekends ago, and that sort of thing as well.
Babak Anvari, I love that guy.
Yep.
All right, so we're on the last day, Sunday. We don't have time to do every single movie.
Okay,
so
okay.
when I read off the list, find the one you really want to talk about, and we'll talk about that one. But here was what we had.
And we can do a roundtable of what our favorite one is of the day.
That sounds great.
That way we've got it.
All right, okay, let's do
So
that.
prepare yourself.
Prepare
Barbara,
yourself
your
for a
favorite.
round.
We're going to do roundtable is your favorite movie of Sunday. So get ready.
And Brad's not going to sneeze right now.
Don't do it, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it.
Toe Jam.
Toe Jam, okay.
Stop sneezing,
That
didn't
did it. You did, yeah. All right, Sunday, the movies were Shut Up and Play the Piano, tied with Wild Nights with Emily, followed by Leto and In the Aisles, followed by Birds of Passage and Swing Kids, followed by Reuben Brandt Collector and I Trapped the Devil, then a double screening plus Q&A with director, writer Al White, Starfish, followed by The Gold Seekers and To the Dust.
No Gold Seekers.
No Gold Seekers. Oh yeah, Gold
Two
Seekers.
dusts. Two dusts.
Just two dusts.
Two dusts.
Two dusts. And then we closed out Lost Weekend 11 with Wild Nights with Emily and Afghan Cycles.
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to do round robin, starting with MK. We're going to go that way. Favorite film of the day and why?
Oh, starting with me. My favorite was Wild Nights with Emily because it wrecked me.
Yeah.
I was like sobbing.
You ran out, and I was just like, MK, goodbye, and you were like, woo!
I'm like, go.
Yeah.
Sobbing right now. But it's a comedy, so like you're laughing through most of the movie, and then it like hits you with this thing at the end. And it really spoke to me both as like a former English major, because it's like about Emily Dickinson, and it's like, you know, historical and literary, but it also speaks to me as a queer kid who, oh, I'm gonna start crying.
Oh my gosh.
We spent 100 years thinking Emily Dickinson was a recluse who was afraid to leave her house and like was like the victim of unrequited love, when in fact she had a relationship with a woman who married Emily's brother specifically so that she could stay close to Emily. And it is erasure in the most literal sense. Because
It really was. I mean,
the woman who collected Emily's poems literally erased Susan's name from the letters, and it wasn't until like 100 years later that we used infrared technology and found Susan's name in the letters.
Yeah. Oh, you're good. You're good, MK.
I regret having not watched it, especially with such pure passion behind the recommendation. I promised to watch it, MK.
As MK sort of is here, this is very exciting to me because Jen and I had the exact same reaction when we first watched it. It is you would think with Molly Shannon, who I think gives the performance of her career, but there is a final scene and Emily Dickinson has been long gone for a while, so I'm not going to spoil anything too much with this. But with the final scene with the erasing of the name, and then her and her partner right there together, it's a scene that lingers. It's a scene that stays with you, and it's a scene that is a literal nail into the coffin of like, this is what what is going wrong with what's happening, with this major story that we've got. I don't know. It is. We watched it and was like, yes. It was almost opening night. This was almost our opening night selection. But we also knew there was a lot of stuff going on, and so we really didn't. We wanted this one to either open or close the weekend itself. And I don't know. I'm very proud, and I'm so glad that was fantastic to hear and see, because movies are supposed to have that sort of emotion and that sort of thing, and we oftentimes think of Emily Dickinson as purely the poetry that goes onto it, but there was this whole life that she had along with it, and it's because we only know one side of the story for so long, which is
insane,
pretty wild.
On a lighter note, I compared it a little bit to Death of Stalin, in that it's like a true story that they present in a very kind of over-the-top comedic sort of way, but they were a little more lethal with it, with the way that they inflate you with the laughter, and it's not quite as over the top as Death of Stalin, obviously, but it's
probably fewer headshots.
Yeah.
Yep.
But it plays you with the comedy of this double life that they're leading, and then just stabs you right in the heart at the end when it does a split screen of Susan washing Emily's body to prepare her to be buried, and Mabel erasing Susan's name from the letters.
Yep. Yeah. It is powerful. It is a powerful, powerful movie. That, again, you would think Molly Shannon, we're going to get something that's completely different than this. But I would hang my hat when people ask me to ask favorite Molly Shannon. This would probably be very close to that. And it's got Amy Siemens as well, who we all remember from Upstream Color, a sort of nod to our first Lost Weekend where we played Upstream.
The New Pet Cemetery.
The New Pet Cemetery film. And I think she is an outstanding actress that doesn't get enough credit out there. So.
All right, Andy, it's your turn. You're second.
So I don't believe in Brad's rules that he set up over here.
That's apparent.
This round robin thing that he's got into it. Oh, really? Is this the Dorkies all over again? Yeah, I'm sorry.
It is. Dorkies was 5.5 hours.
Do the Dorkies only get this sort of time frame? I don't understand this. I'm going to run through my favorites for the whole day, all right, real quick. Shut Up and Play the Piano. I laughed my ass off from beginning to end. I am a Chili Gonzalez fan for life right now, and I loved being in that theater listening to people not knowing that we began with a punk rock guy screaming into the audience and ending with the most beautiful piano work I've ever seen before in my life. Yes. And I also have my favorite line when Chili Gonzalez talks about corporate people in one of his rhymes. He says, "I'm an ass man because I always like the bottom line." Yeah. I love the big bottom lines, and I think that's a hilarious line right there, and I love that. In the Aisles is super sweet and beautiful, and I love the music of that film. And I think that the lady from Tony Erdmann and the man from Transit was a beautiful pairing with each other, and we had some people who cried near the end. Swing Kids had every single person crying in that movie, and I think that we're going to hear Swing Kids mentioned a few more times as we go through here, but Swing Kids will make its way back to the Alamo Drafthouse. We talked about Wild Nights with Emily. I'll leave it there. But for me, highlight was Starfish that day. And Al's no longer here, so it's not necessarily just for him. But I love a movie where I don't know everything when the movie ends. I love a movie that makes me want to revisit it again and look for the things that I missed. I was hooked from the beginning when there was the scene of her drinking from the straw and the red element from the straw began to unravel. And I said to myself, this is going to be something where I am going to watch what's in front of me, and then I'll need to rewatch for what was behind going on and that sort of thing as well. I think it was also incredible to connect the director to the film, because when you meet that person, then suddenly that changes the dynamic for the movie altogether. And Al and I had an immediate sort of synergy and connection when we first met, which I thought was, you don't have that with everyone that sort of walks in. And so I have become a fan, like many of you, with either Presley or with Emilio. I am eager and anticipatingly, I cannot wait till the next project comes out. It was passionate. There was music that I was tearing by the end of Starfish on it. And why? I don't know. I don't know if I understood the nuances of everything from that personal story, but in my head right now, as I woke up today, slept a little bit better last night, like I cannot stop thinking about the scene where she finds herself in the movie. I think that was beautifully filmed, and then there was something just emotionally raw about that whole sort of part to it. And I mentioned, probably in a bit of disrespect, because I never like to compare two people together, but it's like Benson and Moorhead. Like I had that sort of same energy and connection with the way that they were telling their stories. So yeah, I like seeing these young budding guys with like crazy ideas, breaking the norm of what we normally watch. And one of the reasons I wanted to program Starfish was to show you that stories don't have to be a narrative A to B to C to D, but rather here is like the poster art shows. Here's a circular story that's happening. How can we find our way through this untraditional way to tell a story about someone's very personal experience, and I was impressed. Did I get everything? No, but it did make me want to go home and research further and look more. So there's Andy G for Sunday.
And that was a great single pick, Andy. Thank you so much. On to the next one.
Did you want a single pick for the last day or for the whole?
Oh, for the last
day.
Since we haven't talked about Sunday, I figure we'll do just the last day. Yeah.
Okay, so. Birds of Passage for me.
Yes.
And it's just, I mean, I've always thought of the drug wars and the things that are going on down there, but just how human nature is, about how we'll change loyalties based on situations, and how traditions are lost, and the power of corruption and money, and what that does to families and individuals when you think you have everything, you actually have nothing. So to me that was just that was my favorite.
Yeah, Andy put that tagline on the title card, Narcos meets Goodfellas, and I remember snarking at that. But it is, that was actually a pretty apt description of Birds of Passage. It is a story that we have seen previously, like narratively wise, but not from this point of view, not from this culture. And even like when we think about what's going on in Colombia, we don't understand the cultures within Colombia. And how language plays into that, and how family plays into that. And so I found it an incredibly riveting experience.
And another example of the power of women. Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mother,
yeah.
she was the powerhouse of the family.
For sure, yeah. Barbara?
I'm going to go with Swing Kids. As Andy mentioned, it touched on everything, and I thought it was really a neat weaving of certainly the music and the dance steps were amazing to watch. However, they never let it get too far away from the fact that we're in the middle of a war, and I thought that it was so good how they kept, we didn't get to have it as just a feel-good musical movie because of the setting. And I thought the characters were very human. I loved the scene where each of them talked about their lives before the war. I thought that was an important point too, and how it talked about how basically, sure, it was between North and South Korea, but basically, Russia and the United States sort of appropriated their war for their own end, and how we destroyed them or almost destroyed them in the midst of that. I just loved everything about that. It was definitely a cry fest, but important story to tell. So I like that one.
That's on my must-watch list. I'm looking forward to seeing it.
I appreciate any movie that involves the U.S. military, where the U.S. military is not the good guy.
Right.
Because it's a little more historically accurate most of the time.
A rare experience for us.
And if I may add just real quick, interestingly, it had a lot of similarity with what happened in Vietnam. And I had just last year I took a birthday trip, and I went to Vietnam and talk about the U.S. not being the the good guy and stuff. And so it kind of reminded me a lot of that, about how we're viewed through others' eyes, I think.
Love that.
Swing Kids.
Swing Kids?
Yeah.
I mean, you go thinking it's going to be more about dance and music and the tapestry of the war, and that if you took the war away and you took away what's behind that, everybody could have been friends. They really could have. I mean, there's the racism aspect that maybe shows you that they can't, but honestly, I think they all just want to live. Everybody just wants peace, but war. Bawling. I was bawling in a blanket way more than the documentaries. I thought I was safe. I thought it was Sunday, and I was safe, and I was almost done. Damn it. I had no idea that one would get me.
And that was the one that Monty yelled at me a lot with, because I told him to check out Birds of Passage because I thought he'd like that sort of like drug lord
He didn't like
sort
it?
of thing. He liked it, but he hadn't had his big weep yet for Lost Weekend, and he was yelling because everyone coming out of Swing Kids was bawling their eyes out, and he was like, "That's what I wanted, Andy." It's like, I'm sorry. Between the two of you, so that was our longest movie of Lost Weekend.
It didn't
at 2 hours 13 minutes. Did that movie? Because I was nervous about programming that film because of the runtime. But did it feel like that at all in that movie? Okay.
No, I didn't feel too.
Shockingly, and at that point, you're usually exhausted.
Yeah.
I mean, 3 hours
Well,
a
yeah.
night, and Swing. It didn't feel it.
Okay.
I felt it on others, and I think that might have played into my feelings towards certain movies based on my tiredness.
Yeah.
The Swing Kids was just amazing.
Okay.
Agreed.
I love hearing that. Released from Wellgo USA, by the way.
I'm getting a long list of other movies that I still need to watch.
That's I'm doing the same thing.
So I love Birds of Passage, but Reuben. It was interesting.
That's good.
It was very interesting.
Yeah.
And I think what got me in most was the whole idea of subliminal messaging and how that really can play into one's grown-up psychic and how it can drive behavior, and how that they showed that thread, because it was an early introduction in animation, and it was at 25th, and the framing, and it was a sequential framing, and they were using it as a test, but they were using it in lots of places, and we know, I think that we've seen this in advertising where Pepsi slips its way in, or Patagonia slips its way into a shot. And just how that subliminal frame makes, can really drive behavior later on.
Interesting.
And,
Absolutely.
And because it was so, and somebody said it was a Picasso-esque, with all the three eyes and the multiple hands and everything. It was kind of like, okay, I'm going to stay with this because I did have but I wanted a relief from it. But in the end, I was like, everybody has that, don't you? Like my husband with three eyes now. So anyway, it was.
And
I enjoyed it. It was an interesting tale.
what is unique about that film, and I saw it at the end of that screening, is that at the end it gives, through the credits, stay through the credits of that movie, not because there's a post-credit scene, but it actually tells you all the pieces of art that it's referencing, so that you can find yourself going back and trying to find those pieces of art. Right. But then the movie talks a lot about art, but also talks a lot about movies. It's a movie lover's movie. I mean, there's references to Predator in that film. There's references to Die Hard. I mean, there's a lot of, and so at the end it gives its credit list of the different movies that it referenced, and some people were like, I didn't see that one. Right. So if you take that list at the end of the credits and go back to watch Reuben Brandt again, then you start finding yourself watching different elements to that movie, and I think that makes it a really unique film and probably the most unmarketable movie known to man. I mean, I don't want to be rude, but it's like, who are we hitting when we're trying to push that marketing out and that sort of thing as well?
Predator.
People that love art. People that love art is a perfect explanation, but then it's animated, so there's an audience that's like, I'm not going to go see an animated film, and then so it's a bold release. Sony Pictures Classic put out, and I think it's one of those that's like, it's like a book. You read a book about art, you go back through, and then at the end it's got its index, and the index makes you want to go back and revisit the parts that you did, and that's exactly how that was. It is really kind of a movie to watch again and again. So,
Better understand.
yeah.
Danielle, it's on you.
Well, I ended up tapping out on Sunday because I wasn't feeling well, but I was most excited about Afghan Cycles because usually the documentaries are my favorite. And Andy, I just wanted to say how much I appreciated how many documentaries you included this time.
Yes.
Because usually like 2 or 3, I think, and I lost count this time, and I was really happy about that.
Docs are...
Docs are killing it right now, and I think a lot of it has to do with the time that we're in. We want to address these issues, and I seek out docs now more than I've ever had in my entire life.
And I think that docs are finding stories that are crazier than expected. You know, I think that, almost. I mean, you've got to find yourself saying this can't be true, but it is.
And they're pushing the form now.
Yeah.
Things like Bisbee 17, and it's.
And I think we're also changing the structure of the documentary even more, so that it's not just here's a story with a talking head, here's a story with a talking head, here's a story with a talking head, but we're going to give you a cinematic narrative that's true. And you found that with like Midnight Family and that sort of thing as well. But I think documentaries are changing, and it's an amazing world to be watching right now with that.
True. All right, Billy.
So it's Starfish for me, easily. Also because it was the only movie I saw on Sunday. But no, and that's I guess it's just to tease it out White's expense if he's still listening at this point. But no, the thing that I love about Starfish is something that I find that I'm getting more interested in as a moviegoer, which is sort of an emotional exploration of the human condition and how we engage with the less happy or less satisfying things and the more challenging things in our life. And I think what I love about Starfish is that I think by the time you get to the end of the movie, the reason that I felt so emotionally hopeful by the end is because I think the character embraces the fact that we are all guilty, and we carry guilt around with us for the mistakes that we make in our life, and that as you live and live more, you will accrue more guilty moments and things and regrets that you have, and that you have to embrace that as you look as something that's part of your life. And when we were talking with Al last night, after the conversation, I talked to him a little bit about R100, which I don't know how many folks have seen that here.
I love bringing that movie up.
I do. I love that movie to pieces, though. I think it's fantastic.
I can't forget that film.
And we watch animated movies, and Billy's like, this reminds me of R100, which is a movie about BDSM.
Right. So in R100, a Japanese man signs up for 100 BDSM experiences, and he is punished brutally through the entire course of the movie. But R100's not that hard to figure out. It's the same emotional core as Inside Out, which is you have to embrace the painful experiences in your life and find joy and pleasure in them. And I think that Starfish gets to...
She talks about vulnerability and shame.
Yeah?
You should totally watch your TED Talks.
All right. No, but I like that. And I think maybe that's because I spend a lot of time just being very anxious and very concerned about the things that I've done and the choices that I've made, and I worry so much, and that's just a part of who I am. And I think that learning to embrace those less pleasant things as an enjoyable experience of life, because the harder things that I've dealt with in my life, I look back at, and they're a life experience more than they are an emotional weight that I necessarily carry around me. And I think that that's a much healthier way for me to engage with those things. And that's what I get out of Starfish. And I love that exploration and the approach that he takes to telling a story that digs into those things that's not narrative-based, that is more an emotional journey through it.
And close it out for myself, I agree. Starfish was amazing. A movie that I'll need to revisit.
Same.
Is much more of an emotional type of journey, cinematic journey, than I think I was initially expecting, especially when it comes up and says based on a true story.
Yep.
And you're trying to figure out, well, how do you reconcile based on a true story with this alien thing that's happening or whatever it is. And so just on a first time watch, as a viewer, you're trying to understand what he is doing in this movie, and I can't make it work for me except from an emotional experience. And so I enjoyed it at the end of the day. But Birds of Passage was my favorite from Sunday. Again.
Wait.
Brad just broke his own rules.
Is that 2 picks that you just made?
Yeah. And I'll say it's my podcast, so I get to do what I want.
Oh man.
I have the microphone. I have the setup. It's my board, so it's mine, and I get to do what I want. And tell
The
Andy
brunch discussion all over again.
Yeah. Oh boy, don't let's. That was a great conversation about brunch. But Birds of Passage, because of the point of view, and it really felt it felt documentarian to me.
Yeah.
Like, it really felt more about the world it was in, and less about the narrative that they hung on it. And I just soaked it up tremendously. Oh, and since I get to pick multiple picks, Billy, Shut Up and Play the Piano was also really, really good. And I had a blast with that movie. And I had no idea who Chili Gonzalez was, despite being like a fan of Peaches and Feist and all these people that he's associated with. I never really had heard the name Chili Gonzalez. And now I am a new fan. Even though I can't say that I like his music, it's more about... It's like Andy Kaufman's comedy. You mentioned how you thought he was like had Weird Al's.
I should have said it. Yeah.
It was more Andy Kaufman, like the concept of anti-comedy, musicality. So yes, those are my 3 picks for Sunday, and that brings us to the end of Lost Week in 11. Did we miss anything that we really, really wanted to talk about?
I did just want to talk about a hole in the ground really quickly.
The hole in the ground.
The hole in the ground. It said one thing in the program and another on the title screen. But
It's a one-man operation, and we'll fire the guy who did all of that, right?
But it's this little Irish movie about a mother who was convinced her son is an imposter.
Oh yeah.
And maybe it was just the delirium of not sleeping all weekend, but I noticed some like subtle, both superficial and thematic similarities with us, including but not limited to funhouse mirrors.
And iced tea.
We're doing checks. That's all that's going on.
Checks. Okay, don't lose your thought. Let's just get through. There we go. All right, say your thought one more time.
Similarities with us.
Funhouse mirrors.
Funhouse mirrors.
Imposters, and an action mom going to save her kid.
Action Mom.
Now, was it an Irish film? Okay. I caught an accent on the trailer, but I couldn't tell if it was actually all Irish or if she was specifically Irish in America or something along those lines as well. Did it feel like your traditional possession tropes? Or did it bring something new to the table?
It was something I'd never seen before.
Okay.
But I'm not super well versed in horror,
Okay.
so I'm not
Did
going
it
to say
scare?
something new. It was more creepy than scary, I would say.
Like Hereditary? That's what I
I've never
thought.
seen Hereditary.
Oh, you should watch that.
I think you'd like it.
Did it land its ending?
Yes.
Okay. I'll take that. That's good.
Anybody else? Any last minute
Giant
plugs?
little ones, I think
Yes.
people should really take a look at. I don't know that the blurb in about it will make you think it's just some fun-loving little teenage. Like, no, your blurbs are great.
They're fine. They're fine. It just didn't do what
I'd
it was
like to
supposed
thank IMDb for the cut and paste job I was able to do on those.
If you liked Love, Simon, but it talks about teenage angst and how your sexuality can make or break you in high school, but it was very, very funny.
Yeah.
And they uncomfortably funny, but I really liked this film, and I think the Sears that were with me, they really loved it. So if anybody listening is like, all right, out of all these films, highlight that one too.
Yeah,
add it to your list.
that's one I want to get back. I grabbed it based on reviews that I had read that were very positive, and one that I want to get back to watch again. But I had read, or I had spoke to several people that were talking about how it was, and the Vastas were another one. I mean, Gail came and saw it a second time because she was so impressed by it. And that was the first time, I think, for any Lost Weekend that we've had someone watch a film twice during a Lost Weekend festival. So that gives me a lot of excitement and hope.
So we are at that time we have to say goodbye to Lost Weekend 11 officially. I think anybody who has made it to the end of this podcast and has not attended a Lost Weekend in Alamo, Winchester, is probably changing their life to make sure that happens. Certainly, if you're in the DMV, you need to get yourself to the Alamo Draft House here in Winchester, Virginia, because it is an experience unlike any other. And you don't have to just wait for Lost Weekend. They have an amazing film club that everyone here at this table can attest to, that they bring, documentaries, genre films, non-genre films, independent, unique cinematic experiences it seems like every day, Andy, not just Wednesdays and Sundays.
It's a lot of stuff going on.
Many days.
When we are on calls with other Alamo Draft Houses, they're like, we're not like Andy who's doing film club every day. And I'm like, it's not every day, but maybe every other day. I'd like to conclude this by saying that I love film or Lost Weekend because I want to always be changing it. I look towards all of you, and the last thing that I want is for you to spend another $35 and say, I've had the same experience. I've had the same experience that I had last time. Why do we keep going back to all of this? Every time I want to change it and grow and develop it. And one of the things that I absolutely love and I want to continue to grow and develop is our ITMOD debrief. I think this thing turned out really well today.
So fun. Thank you.
And I got to tell you that this is, I could see us in another year, another maybe one or two Lost Weekends, having 40 people here talking about this thing.
I may have to buy some more microphones.
But when we sat down and talked about what ITMOD meant for Lost Weekend, this is what we thought it was. And it surprises me a little bit that it took 11 Lost Weekends to get us here. But I think that this was probably... this is the thing that I'll hang my hat on at the end of Lost Weekend because I love hearing all of this. And we don't hear it oftentimes on social media. I just hear I see a review that's like climax 0 out of 10, and you're just sort of like, what did I do wrong here? But this was just more of an expression of the overall weekend as a whole.
And as much as I love a festival, because you're going from movie to movie to movie to movie, you barely have time to say hi to your neighbor, let alone talk about the movie in any significant way. And so I really appreciate the opportunity to gather with you fine folks and discuss the films. And, I appreciate Andy for allowing us into the Alamo Draft House and having these conversations and hooking us up with the Green Turtle here and setting us up and invading their little back room. This is what I live for.
Bravo. And Darren Smith, I'm sorry you couldn't make it, but I had chicken tenders with honey mustard, which your mic smells that way now.
Yes. I can. We'll work something out. I'll continue to dip it.
What is I always wanted to say on this podcast? I know what it is. I love being a turtle. That goes out to Brian Young, also not here as well.
That is a good ring.
If you could please cut that out and use that anytime for the Turtle Dork introduces himself, especially in that raspy, like this turtle should be put down sort of voice. That would be. That's exactly what I'm going for right there.
We didn't even talk about your voice, Andy.
Yeah, Bellini. I pulled it out at the last minutes for everything, but in between, I am so sorry. There were a few bravos there that it sounded like I just pulled my hand out of the ground and was just there to say bravo.
Yeah, well, Lisa can train you. We got to get you into
Lisa Gullickson?
Lisa Gullickson.
I do need that training.
Vocal exercises to prepare you for every Lost Weekend.
I would like
your
this.
Bravo remains the same every time.
What I'd also love is to have someone film this,
yes.
and then we do the best damn montage in the entire world, where it's like, and then Lisa's just like, cow.
We can do that.
And then I'll do one where I'm putting on different outfits as well.
So Andy, again.
Wait, what? I haven't paying attention again. What's happening?
Outfit montage.
Outfit montage.
Andy's going to try on clothes for the next Lost Weekend? We're going to film it?
I saw Al 3 times last night right before I left, and each time I saw him, I was wearing something different. And he was like, what are you, Madonna here?
Outfit change.
Outfit change.
Costumes. Andy, so where can we follow you and the Draft House on the socials?
Yep, so we're Alamo Winchester on Twitter. We are Alamo VA on Facebook, or just type in Alamo Draft House Winchester. And then for myself, you can find me on Twitter, typically Cinema Bandwagon, or on Instagram as Film Club Andy. I try to keep it simple as possible.
Makes sense. Yes. And Billy.
Yeah.
Where can we find you on the socials?
You can find me at WB Das on Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd. And you can find me now running Bill and Claire's Excellent Adventure at BACEA Podcast on Twitter.
And does anybody at the table want to promote their Twitter feeds? Now's the time.
Yeah.
Okay, do it.
Can I name drop my podcast?
Yes?
Yes.
If you want to listen to a podcast about books, check out Drunk Queer Bitches Talk Books. You can find us on Twitter and Instagram at DQB Talk Books.
We will do that. We should
Yeah.
cross-promote.
We should.
We should cross-promote.
And you're on Twitter, aren't you?
Yeah, we should do that.
It's just me.
Yeah. Where can we follow the Ann Overton?
I think it's Ann Lee 55, but I'm not sure.
I like that.
That works.
That works.
She's so casual about her social media. Maybe it's this. Who knows?
Twitter is
I have enough
where
followers
I
as it
deal
is.
with my liberal friends, and Facebook is where I just deal with my conservative.
Wow, that is so true. That's so true.
What about
I divide my friends out.
What's that?
Etsy business?
Etsy
Yeah,
business.
do
Yeah,
it.
plug
Go, Barbara.
business.
Plug it.
Angry Buddha Body Shop.
Yeah.
Yes.
And what
And
can
it's
we find at Angry Buddha Body Shop?
Yeah.
What can we find at Angry Buddha Body Shop?
Very cool.
Healthy body products for kids, men, women, any kind of bath care things, and it's all natural ingredients. The proprietor is my hero. She juggles a lot of things, and this is her business, Mercedes Mercardi. And just want to give her a shout out.
Yeah.
Because if I had a child, it would be her, hopefully. She's totally my hero. But she's my friend instead of my child. So.
And she is on Etsy, is that right? If you look up Angry
Yes,
Buddha
or
Body Shop
Facebook,
on Etsy.
actually.
She
You can
and
find it that way.
Facebook,
Yeah.
world's best lotion.
There you
there
go.
we
There
go.
it is.
Yay,
There you go.
good.
World's
Thank you.
best.
Thank you for that.
And to my other dorks who could not join us for the majority of last weekend, I will still plug you, even though you're all jerks.
Oh, use that thing again.
This is
I
all Brad's opinion.
love
I
being
just
a
wanna
turtle.
I love being a turtle. So let's start with Brian Young at the Turtle Dork on Twitter. He's got some other socials.
At the Turtle Dork 1 on Instagram, at Brian B. Young on Facebook.
One of these days I'll remember those.
I don't know that the Facebook thing is right. I just
I
keep
don't
saying
think
it
it
like
is.
that.
Darren Smith is at the Disco Dork on Twitter, Instagram, and Lisa Gullickson is at Sidewalk Siren on Twitter, Instagram. She's also at the Bake Dork sometimes. And I am Brad Gullickson at Mouth Dork on
Go ahead.
Twitter, Instagram, Untapped, some other places.
Letterboxd.
Letterboxd.
Yeah, you can find me at Mouth Dork. Yes, Andy, what?
Just wanted to say happy birthday to Lisa Gullickson's dad, turning 100 years old.
Grandfather. Yeah.
Turning, I'm sorry, Lisa Gullickson's dad. It's slightly awkward there.
Yeah, Grandpa Joe,
just turned 100 years old. So
old.
when Lisa listens, she subscribes to this podcast,
She does
doesn't she?
subscribe.
That's good.
She has not reviewed it like I've asked her many times.
Well,
5 stars, Lisa. Give us 5 stars.
yeah. I just want to, Grandpa Joe.
Yes.
Here's to another 100.
Here's to another 100. Yeah,
I like
Grandpa
that.
Joe. I'm sorry I missed your birthday for movies, but movies. Until next time, folks. Take care.
I love being a turtle.